At the beginning of this year, I made my first video essay titled How Much Work Goes into Creating a Genshin Impact Character. Since then, the channel has grown a lot, so I figured what better way to celebrate hitting a crazy milestone like 50,000 subscribers than to revisit this topic. Not only has my video production improved a bit, but I also now know much more about the game and its development processes. What things must be considered when making a new character? Why does the development cycle for them seem so long? In this video, I hope to provide some insight by looking into character design from a development standpoint. So without further ado, let's try and answer the question one more time: how much work goes into creating a Genshin Impact character? As with anything really, a Genshin character begins with an idea. This is arguably the most important phase because the groundwork laid out here directly influences every other part of the character's development. This is when they establish the character's core, or basically what sets them apart from the rest of the expansive cast. This can take on many different forms, such as an occupation, their role within Teyvat, or even just their outlook on life. This is also when cultural inspirations are decided on, which are most directly depicted through the character's constellation. The next early stage would be visual design. A good place to start would probably be choosing one of the 5 body types that are currently in the game: medium-sized male and female, taller male and female, or little girl. Regarding the actual details of the design, there's a lot to take into account. Hair, eyes, clothing, accessories, and even overall color scheme are made to fit the character themes. The goal is to show basic information about the character purely through visual storytelling. For example, Bennett has a bag and goggles, showing that he's an adventurer, while his many scars shows that he tends to get into a lot of accidents. Good character design highlights individuality by emphasizing the character's most distinctive traits, which is often not easy to accomplish. 2 different arts are made for each character, one full body portrait and another which depicts them using some kind of ability. These artworks are especially important because they are what is most directly associated with the idea of the character. When you think of them, you think of how they are portrayed here. So even subtle things like their posing and facial expression leave a strong lasting impression. Once the visual design has been established, that allows a 3D model representation to be created. But it's relatively easy to make a character look good from one angle in a 2-dimensional space, as opposed to every angle in a 3-dimensional space. This is why when people say Diluc and Albedo's hair in drawings looks better than in-game, it's not really a fair comparison. Another thing that needs to be taken into consideration, which isn't related to pure looks, is the polygon count. This refers to the amount of unique triangles which make up the entirety of the model. It's easy to forget that the multiple platforms on which Genshin is available all need to be taken into account when it comes to rendering visuals. Sometimes you have to sacrifice quality, in this case polygon count, to ensure the game can run as smoothly as possible. One sort of workaround to this is creating the illusion of depth through the flat textures that are mapped to the model. Higher fidelity models are commonly used in pre-rendered footage, but for real-time gameplay it is much more reasonable to strike a balance. The natural progression from there would be animating that model. This requires attaching it to a skeleton so that they can move individual pieces independent of each other. Basic movements like walking, running, jumping, sprinting, pivoting, landing, sitting, gliding, climbing, diving, and even dying are determined by the character's body type, but every outfit flows in a unique way that necessitates special fine-tuning. Each character has a basic attack string with a couple of examples of 4-star pairs who share some animations for it, but generally each character has their own fighting style. Abilities, on the other hand, are always unique per character. Each attack also has a wind down animation which shows them resetting to a neutral stance, though in actual combat they tend to get cancelled by inputting other actions. Sometimes they are just as simple as they sound, and sometimes a little bit of extra flair is thrown in. Within all these animations, some parts which need to be considered are the character's movements, the weapon they're holding, their clothing, and facial expressions. It is likely that a majority of this is done by hand, with some in-between frames interpolated by the computer. Ability animations also entail VFX to convey the impact of the move being used, as well as to act as visual indicators. For 5-star specifically, their elemental burst also includes some kind of dynamic camera angle with special background elements. Last but not least, each character has up to 2 idle animations, which emphasize the main qualities of the character, often in funny or interesting ways. At the same time, gameplay must also be developed. Of course, you have your standard 6 elements and 5 weapon types to choose from, but that is far from what actually makes a character feel unique to play. First is probably deciding between the character's general role in a team comp, a main DPS where they need to be on the field to be effective, or a sub DPS / support where they can be useful off the field. Then comes more questions to define a unique style, like does the character rely on normal attacks or charged attacks? Do they have a burst that should have setup? Do they provide stat bonuses? Although some characters will inevitably end up having similarities, even small differences in kit ensures that each one fulfills their own niche within the team composition. And even after the mechanics are established, there are a lot of specific values to adjust, like cooldowns, energy cost of the burst, and scalings per talent level. Then there's constellations, 4 of which alter gameplay in some kind of unique way. Here's one that's criminally overlooked: sound design. You don't often think about it, but sound gives meaning and weight to every action. From the sound of a claymore slamming the ground, to the rustling of clothes as you run. Sound adds that extra bit of life. This often entails Foley artists experimenting with a variety of materials to try and capture that perfect sound. And then of course there's the voice acting, another way to directly convey the character's personality. For each of the game's 4 voiceover languages, English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean, a voice actor needs to be casted. Probably amongst many different candidates, one person is chosen who is best able to portray the personality of that character. Then, working with a voice director, the voice actor is responsible for all of the voice lines in combat, when idle, reacting to the weather, talking about other characters, and of course, whatever in-game event the character might be involved in. But all of this work is more than worthwhile because of how much voice acting fleshes out the identity of a character. I can't imagine Venti without his playful tone, or Zhongli without his deep voice, because that's a big part of what makes the characters who they are. You might think that writing the lore is the easiest part of making a character since it doesn't require as much technical skill, but I can tell after reading each one that it is not so simple. Starting with the 8 pieces of text which make up the character's story section, they are much more than just writing that happens to have the character in it. They always give deep insight into the character's backstory, explaining the reasoning for many of their current personality traits and motivations. Oftentimes, these stories may include other playable characters. These, along with the voice lines about other characters, are always great to see because it makes the world feel much more believable. Just like how in real life, you often meet people and form relationships in unexpected ways, so do the characters of this game. Creating an interconnected web of stories consisting of over 30 characters with more on the way is certainly not an easy thing to accomplish. There's a few more things that don't fit into any previous category. They don't need any further explanation, but they are the name card, specialty dish, ascension materials, and promotional material. The last of which entails a demo and showcase, as well as an animated teaser for 5 stars. And if it wasn't hard enough to do all of these things one time, each part goes through multiple revisions. As a character becomes more and more defined, sometimes ideas that seem good at one point may be scrapped entirely. After beta testing, the final version of the character, which gets pushed out for release, is the culmination of tons of work by multiple different teams. When you take into account all of the things which I've discussed and other stuff which I might have missed, you realize that like with many things, creating a Genshin Impact character is nowhere as simple as it may seem. With the most recent update livestream, the developers of the game were directly showing us just how passionate they are about what they do. I am very much looking forward to new characters and just the future of Genshin Impact, knowing that MiHoYo puts so much care into everything. As always, thank you for watching.